usually close to the rivers, live scattered tribes of Indians, eking out a bare existence in a hard and exacting environment.
Rice brought American science and racial ideas to bear on the indigenous peoples that he came across.
We took anthropological measurements to add to the data that we were gathering to bring back.
It's a very good example of turning the human into natural history. You measure, you make it, you get the profile vision, you have the front vision, and create your object of study.
The Indian put down anywhere by himself in the wilderness can survive. His adaptability to his environment is admirably attuned, but any initiative for progress is lacking.
To Hamilton Rice, the indigenous peoples were almost like wildlife, too few and too primitive to make any impact on the pristine vastness that surrounded them. They were, in effect, irrelevant. Today, archaeologists and anthropologists are challenging this simplistic view. There is evidence that hunter-gatherer communities have been living in the Amazon for more than 10,000 years. But until recently, they were considered to have minimal effect on their environment. Now, research on how current hunter-gatherers move about the forest, creating temporary camps, is revealing something unexpected.
Today's hunter-gatherers in the Amazon are not passively adapting to the forest, but they are actively managing it. And intentionally or unintentionally, they are creating patches of forest with wild edible plants, like palms and tree fruits. Every time they open a camp, they are disturbing the forest, and they are creating a new type of forest that is a more rich forest.
The result is a forest that's rather less virgin than we imagined. It's an anthropogenic or man-made forest, one that owes its character not just to the interplay of natural forces, but has also been significantly shaped by the people who have lived in it.
Some plants, if you collect them and then throw the seeds away in your garbage, well, then they do better. And so the fruits are bigger. And then you say, oh, these are better than these ones, than the ones over there, so we'll use more of these. So you're selecting upon the plants that have already been selected by where you threw them away.
And this thing then grows into a tree and is later perhaps distributed by other organisms that also like the pulp of that fruit tree. And they could then move into such places and spread the human effect around, but it's still an anthropogenic effect.
Every time they abandon each of these camps, when they return, most of this forest is not anymore a natural forest, but is like a small garden. Over a period of years, 100 years, and over a period of millennia, this forest that just started with the opening of a camp is going to be a pretty managed forest.
For millennia, hunter-gatherers of one kind or another have been living across the Amazon, and all this time they've been reshaping a forest we've thought to be pristine. But surprisingly, this idea of a forest shaped by humans is not a new one. "450 years ago, the first European explorers to set foot in the Amazon gave a very different account of the region and its inhabitants. In 1541, the Spanish conquistador Francisco de Orellana sailed down the Amazon River in search of El Dorado. And although he never found the mythical city of gold, he left a rich testimony of the wonders he encountered throughout the epic journey.
And it's a very important document because it's the first written thing that we have by an European about the Amazon and its people in the early 16th century.
The further we went, the more thickly populated and better did we find the land. There were many roads here that enter into the interior of the land, very fine highways. Inland from the river, to a distance of 6 miles more or less, there could be seen some very large cities that glisten in white, and besides this, the land is as fertile and as normal in appearance as our Spain.
We can see that he was impressed of how many people, how many villages there were, one after the other. He describes like days and days going down the Amazon and not one empty space.
He couldn't believe how gorgeous the culture was. He raved over the beautiful pottery which the women made, and the clothing, the beautiful painted robes that people wore, just amazed him.
And they were struck by the enormous biodiversity, just thriving with life, thought of as a bountiful paradise, like a Garden of Eden. And indigenous peoples who they came across found to be very healthy. They appeared to have very good diets. They weren't starving or didn't appear to be.
The Spanish there, they went so hungry that they had to eat their leather belts. They were absolutely incapable of fishing or hunting in the forest. So the admiration that they must have had for these Indians who could furnish them a great amount of food. And they talk about maize, about bread, probably manioc bread. They talk about fish and turtles and all sorts of nuts and fruits.
Orellana's account was quite literally unique. No later traveller confirmed what he'd seen.
When you compare the chronicles from the 16th into the 17th century, you see something totally different. 100 years later, they all have disappeared. I mean, those large settlements, they will find just, a house or two, a village or two, things like that.
Where were all the people and all the towns that Orellana had reported seeing? Could he have concocted a fictitious account? Or had something cataclysmic happened?
And there's argument about that. So was he exaggerating his claims for the Spanish court, or was it accurate?
On his return to Spain, Orellana fell out of favour with the court, and as a result his extraordinary account of the Amazon went unpublished for centuries. What we do know now is that in the Amazon, like the rest of South and North America, the arrival of Europeans like Orellana and subsequent colonists and missionaries brought catastrophe for the indigenous population.
The people who lived on those places disappeared because of diseases, slavery, warfare. They were like, the spread of disease was very, very strong. Smallpox, the flu, they had a very strong effect on those people.
It's thought that maybe up to 90–95% of indigenous peoples were actually decimated by European diseases to which they had very little resistance.
So what Europeans after Orellana saw when they visited the Amazon was a sparsely populated region inhabited by the few survivors of these devastating waves of disease.